In fact, I've talked to workers who've admitted to me that they would find satisfaction in seeing the boss fail, even if that failure caused a consequence to other workers. Stay tuned. Coming up, we're going to be discussing the fear of public speaking and the consequences it can have in the workplace. But first, let's hear from our amazing sponsor, Midwest Fire.
Every day, the hard-working men and women at Midwest Fire build the most reliable firefighting apparatus to be found anywhere. Their customers know a well-built fire engine means lives and property saved. Midwest Fire, a factory direct manufacturer dedicated to helping you extinguish fire before it becomes a raging beast. To learn more about what fuels their passion, visit MidwestFire.com.
Hello and welcome to episode 325 of the Situational Awareness Matters show. I'm your host, Rich Gassaway. The purpose of this show is to improve situational awareness and decision-making for individuals and teams who work in high-risk, high-consequence, time-compressed environments with changing conditions. The SA Matters mission is simple. We want to help you see the bad things coming in time to avoid bad outcomes. Today's feature segment is sponsored by our new online training platform, Gassaway Virtual Training. We now have 33 online training programs for your members. Some of the programs are live events presented virtually, and some are pre-recorded programs. To learn more, visit samatters.com website and click on the Virtual Training tab. Okay, let's jump into our feature segment discussing the fear of public speaking and the consequences that it can have in the workplace. Some years ago, I stumbled across a survey that was done by a research firm designed to uncover what it is that people fear the most. And while the usual suspects were on the list, the fear of snakes, the fear of insects, the fear of clowns, I was somewhat surprised to see the number one fear was the fear of public speaking. Just as a point of reference, the fear of dying was number 7 on this survey, meaning that more people are afraid of giving the eulogy at a funeral than being the person in the box. Strange, isn't it? Or is it? However, once I got to thinking about it, it wasn't so strange after all. In fact, it made a lot of sense to me. Then I started looking at organizations that I consult with to see if the fear of public speaking, and more specifically the fear of speaking up, played a role in near miss and accident events. And sure enough, it did. A bigger role than I could have imagined. When I work with organizations to evaluate near misses and accidents, I get to interview frontline workers, supervisors, and managers. One of the things that I evaluate is the role that fear may have played in the event. Specifically, I ask workers if they fear speaking up, if they see something going wrong, or anticipate something will not work as intended. The overwhelming sentiment is they won't speak up. Then I ask why not, and the answer is consistent. Fear. But fear of what? Then the ugly truth gets revealed. The fear of being wrong, the fear of being ridiculed, the fear of having a consequence from a superior, the fear of embarrassment, the fear of judgment. There you have it. It's not the fear of speaking up that's the issue. It's the fear of what will happen if a worker has the courage to speak up. Ridicule, consequence, embarrassment, judgment. A lot of this has to do with the organization's culture and styles of leadership within. But all the blame cannot sit on the organization's shoulders. Some of this fear is manifested in the mind of the individual and may be tied to the environment in which they were raised or schooled. Some of those lessons from early years stick, and they're hard to get rid of. I once heard a joke that, while it made me chuckle, has a real element of truth as it relates to the discussion here. Parents spend the first 2 years teaching their infants and toddlers how to walk and talk, and then the next 16 years telling them to sit down and shut up. In some work settings, new workers are taught to keep their mouths shut and learn. They're strongly discouraged from sharing ideas or expressing concerns. To some degree, this may be understandable. A new worker may not know enough about the work being performed to have an opinion. That's not for me to judge. But eventually, those workers will develop some experience and have very meaningful ideas and concerns to express, but they won't. Why? Because they've been hit hard with the be seen and not heard message from coworkers and supervisors. In some organizations, it's widely believed that the only ideas or opinions that matter are those with rank or seniority. And that belief permeates throughout the organization and becomes part of the culture. Here are a couple of sad examples. I was working with an organization that does crane work. They lift and move heavy loads on a dock. There was an incident where a load struck a building, and while there were no injuries, the outcome could have been very different. When I was conducting individual interviews with the workers, 2 of them admitted to me that they knew the accident was going to happen, or they knew there was a high probability that it would. I asked both of them if they said anything prior to the load striking the building. Neither one did. Why? Fear. Fear of being wrong, fear of being ridiculed from senior peers, fear from consequences from their supervisors. I've also had the opportunity to interview hundreds of first responders who've experienced near-miss events. Many of those interviews have been recorded and are available for you to listen to right here on the Situational Awareness Matters show. Some of those interviewed have admitted to me, some on camera, some not on camera, that they did not speak up even though they knew something was going to turn out poorly. Why? Fear. Fear of embarrassment, fear of consequence, fear of ridicule, fear of judgment. It's worth noting the outcome of some of these events were catastrophic, meaning someone died, yet they did not speak up. I've had numerous firefighters report to me they've been inside structure fires where conditions were deteriorating and they were afraid they were going to die, but they were not afraid enough to speak up because there was a fear greater than the fear of dying, the fear of ridicule, judgment, embarrassment, consequence. They admitted to me that they would only retreat or withdraw from the building if they had been ordered to do so by a superior officer. And absent the order, they would not speak up and they would not leave, even if the conditions were right to do so. Sadly, though, there are supervisors who know that the incident outcome is going to be bad, and yet they will not speak up. Or in the case of a fireground commander at a structure fire, they will not order the crews out of the building. Why? Fear. Not the fear of getting someone killed, but a fear much greater and much more deeply rooted in the psyche. A fear of being wrong, a fear of being judged, a fear of ridicule, embarrassment, consequence. Perhaps in non-critical situations, workers have mustered the courage to speak up about a concern. If their speaking up resulted in any form of consequence, like they got in trouble, or judgment, or embarrassment, or ridicule, the lesson to keep one's mouth shut is sealed in their memory. Then under conditions where the stakes are higher, where the outcome could be an injury or death, the worker is likely to remember the lesson of the previous times when they've spoken up or sadly said nothing. Let's look at another scenario, one in which the worker and their boss do not get along with each other. The lack of working relationship, rooted in the poor communication skills that they have had with each other day in and day out, may cause a worker to lack concern for a bad outcome of the supervisor's poor decision making. In fact, I've talked to workers who've admitted to me that they would find satisfaction in seeing the boss fail, even if that failure caused a consequence to other workers. It's a sad reality, but revenge is a very powerful motivator toward deviant behavior. But that's a digression from the discussion and the topic that I'm here to talk about today. So maybe we'll take that one up on another day. So what are some solutions to help workers overcome this fear? Some bosses think it's simply just tell the subordinates that it's okay to speak up. If you see something going wrong, speak up. Giving the workers that assurance from the boss is certainly helpful, but it's not enough. Here's what I suggest. First, it's important to have a frank conversation about fear and why people fear speaking up. But once it's out there on the table, then the topic needs to be opened up for a greater discussion. The boss may not get much participation in that discussion. Why? Fear. Ironic, isn't it? Asking open-ended questions to encourage dialogue will be helpful, but it may not be enough. There's another dynamic in play here if the discussion is held during a meeting. The fear of speaking up is exponentially compounded when there's an audience, other people in the room. Those other people in the room create more opportunity for judgment and ridicule and embarrassment. This can cause the fearful worker to clam up quick. And while the frank conversation may be more effective in a one-on-one setting, this isn't always possible or feasible. But the conversation about fear is still important. Then once the foundation is laid about what fear is and why people fear public speaking or speaking up, the supervisor should then provide some examples to the workers of exactly what to say and exactly how to say it. This can be done in several stages. First, the supervisor can offer some examples or scenarios where workers should speak up, like unsafe work practices or poor decisions that are going to hold the potential for consequence. Then the supervisor can offer a set of scripted words for the subordinates to use. Then the supervisor should demonstrate how to have those words spoken, demonstrating tone and inflection. Then the supervisor should role play a scenario where the subordinate plays the role of the supervisor and the supervisor plays the role of the worker, demonstrating how to approach a supervisor and using the scripted phrases. Then a subordinate should get an opportunity to practice speaking up. This is a critical component of the training. As you will learn quickly, it's one thing to say to someone to speak up, and it's an entirely different set of circumstances to actually speak up. Why? Fear. Fear of judgment, fear of ridicule, fear of consequence, fear of embarrassment. But the only way to overcome this fear is to practice. Yes, to actually practice speaking up. And with practice and feedback, a subordinate develops a skill set for speaking up. There's another component to the training that is essential. We must teach supervisors about fear and why workers fear speaking up. Sometimes the supervisor is the source of the fear because they hold the ability to create consequence. And some supervisors are intimidating, some on purpose, and some inadvertently. The role of supervisor training on fear and speaking up is to help the supervisor understand the importance of having workers who are willing and able to bring up concerns and ideas. This can present some challenges because some supervisors will be fearful their decisions are wrong, and having them pointed out by a subordinate can embarrass the supervisor. All of these emotions need to be put on the table and discussed. I'm hopeful that a supervisor, not gripped by fear, would never want to have someone hurt or killed because of their bad decision making. If we can get a supervisor to acknowledge that to be a commonly shared goal, then offering the training and the tools to encourage their subordinates to speak up will be more effective. This can take some work because some supervisors may have a long history of shutting down anyone who disagrees with them. Sprinkle in a dose of ego and bravado, and it can quickly become apparent that workers have a good reason to be fearful and to not speak up. When teaching workers and supervisors how to express concerns for safety, consider developing a single phrase that everyone can use to indicate they have a concern. In aviation, the phrase is simply, "I have a concern." Those 4 words then evoke a response where the supervisor must defer to the person who has the concern and hear out their concern with empathy. Years ago, I was teaching a leadership class for the Buckley Fire Department in Washington. And we got on the discussion about the fear of speaking up. And the fire chief, Alan Predmore, immediately saw the value of the lesson and the importance of teaching his crews about the fear of speaking up and the need to teach them on what to say, how to say it, and how to practice it. Subsequent discussions with his personnel led to the creation of a phrase: "The pigs are eating lemons." What in the world does that mean? The pigs are eating lemons. The beauty of this phrase is amazingly simplistic. If someone comes up to you while you are supervising and making decisions in a high-risk work environment and said to you, "The pigs are eating lemons," it would almost reflexively cause you to think and probably say, "What does that mean?" And that question opens the door for a conversation. "The pigs are eating lemons" unto itself is just gibberish. It means nothing. Yet it says so much. "The pigs are eating lemons" are a non-threatening way of saying I have a concern. It begs for further explanation, and thus the door is open for a conversation. Of course, whatever your cause for concern statement is, pigs are eating lemons or otherwise, it should be known to everyone what it means when it's stated. The person who makes the statement should then be prepared to professionally state their concern and make a recommendation to address the concern. This is important. It's not enough to simply point out the concern. The real value is bringing an idea to the table to fix the concern. Otherwise, it just may come off as complaining. So here's an example of how this might be used for firefighters. A crew is on the roof of a house that's on fire. Their task is to cut a hole in the roof, ventilating the smoke from down below. But the fire is extended into the attic, and there's a concern that the roof's substructure is going to weaken and collapse. And if this happens, the firefighters are likely to fall through the roof and get hurt or killed. The person in charge, the incident commander, is stretched thin, trying to coordinate multiple crews and multiple priorities, and perhaps not even aware that the crew on the roof is in danger. Here's how it goes. Subordinate to the incident commander: "The pigs are eating lemons." The commander: "What is your concern?" Subordinate: "We have a crew on the roof and the fire is extended into the attic space. I'm concerned the roof will weaken and collapse before they can get the task completed. I recommend the crew be ordered off the roof and we perform ventilation horizontally." Commander: "I see what you're saying. That's a legitimate concern. I'll order the crew off the roof." Now, to be perfectly honest, the commander's response to this example is a response that maybe we would most want to hear. There's no assurance the commander will accept your recommendation after you've shared your concern. This is where training in advance of needing to have this conversation can pay off. With the proper training for both the supervisor and subordinate, the issues related to the fear of speaking up have been addressed, and the motive for speaking up is well understood. Once the issue is addressed by the subordinate, the commander's response can essentially go one of three ways. First, they might say, I'm in charge here. It's not your role to tell me how to do my job. Second, they might say, I'll take your concern under advisement, but I'm going to do what I think is best. Third, they might say, thank you for pointing this out. It was not so obvious to me. Let's get this problem fixed right away. Subordinates should not assume that simply because a supervisor is highly experienced that they can see and hear and comprehend every aspect of what is happening in a high-stress environment. They can't. Supervisors need to realize that as well. When humble and compassionate leaders are supportive of dedicated and compassionate followers, and both are willing to professionally speak up when they have a concern, the work environment will be much safer, and errors in decision-making can be caught and corrected in time to prevent bad outcomes. Since 2007, SA Matters instructors have helped more than 1,200 organizations and 87,000 individuals improve high-risk decision-making, including first responders, industrial workers, military personnel, business leaders, medical professionals, utility workers, highway workers, aviation workers, oil refinery operators, and more. If you or someone you care about works in a high-risk, high-consequence decision-making environment, then we are here to help to improve their safety and survival and to help them accomplish the most important mission of all, and that is to go home to the ones who love them. Normally, this is the part of the show where I would thank the organizations that have hosted recent situational awareness programs, but given the pandemic and social distancing rules, pretty much all of my programs have been postponed until this week, when something magical happened. The Buckley Fire Department called me. Yeah, the same Buckley that are of the Pigs Are Eating Lemons fame, and provided me the opportunity to speak to their recruitment academy on situational awareness. And their fire chief, Alan Predmore, he's retiring after serving as the fire chief of Buckley for 22 years. So I've been given the opportunity to talk to their members about what to expect when you get a new chief. Now, this is not necessarily my area of expertise, but I have been hired in from the outside to be the chief in 2 different fire departments, and quite frankly, was quite surprised both times with what transpired in the next 6 to 12 months following. I made my share of mistakes along the way too, not fully realizing the impact new leadership has on the members. So we're going to have a facilitated discussion about what to expect when you're getting a new chief. If you're interested in knowing all of our events, past, virtual, postponed, and future, they're all listed on the SA Matters website. If you're interested in seeing the list of where we've been or where we're going, just head over to the website and click on the program dates under the live training tab on the homepage. If you're interested in hosting a program virtually or live when the pandemic's over, and it looks like we're heading to things starting to open back up again, just click on the Contact Us tab at the top of the homepage and I'll give you a call. Remember to check the show notes for how to subscribe to our newsletter and how to follow us on social media. There we're sharing ideas about how to improve situational awareness, how to make better decisions under stress, and how to improve the skills of critical thinking and resilient problem solving. Well, that's it. Episode 325 of the Situational Awareness Matters show is complete. Thank you to our amazing platinum sponsor, now for 6 years, Midwest Fire. Thank you to our feature segment sponsor, Gasaway Virtual Training. Thank you to our associate sponsor, Chief Miller. And most importantly, thank you, the listeners and viewers of this show, for sharing some of your valuable time with me today. I really appreciate your support of the SA Matters mission. Be safe out there, and may the peace of the Lord and strong situational awareness be with you always.
You've been listening to the Situational Awareness Matters Show with Dr. Richard Gasaway. If you're interested in learning more about situational awareness, human factors, and decision-making under stress, visit his website, samatters.com. If you're interested in booking Dr. Gasaway for a program, or if you would like to be a guest on his show, click the Contact Us tab at the top of the homepage.